All right, so let's go ahead and talk about Chavez Jr. Now, Chavez Jr. has made a lot of headlines recently due to the fact that he wasn't able, or has at least been struggling, to make the contracted weight for his fight against Brian Vera coming up. All right, the weight the fight was scheduled for was 168, which is actually a higher weight than Chavez has actually been fighting at. He's been fighting at 160. So now he looks like he's trying to fight at the super middleweight limit, which is 168, and he can't even do that. He's struggling to make 168, which is crazy because I asked myself the question, how has this guy been making 160 all this time, and now he's struggling to make 168? And there's probably some factors involved. One, the fact that this guy is just has low dedication to the sport of boxing, and two, when you incorporate the fact that he has been inactive for a long time, so he probably just wasn't really into the swing of things as far as training as he would have been before, just due to inactivity. But basically, this guy is struggling to make 168. So there's supposedly going to be a new contracted weight, apparently, of 173. That's going to be the maximum weight that he's going to be allowed to come in for this fight. Now, the real reason I'm making this video isn't really to talk about his weight issues. It's to talk about some comments that this guy has said. So I'm just going to go ahead and read this article about Chavez Jr. on Boxing Scene, what he said basically. Um, I'm willing to go down to 160 pounds to face Martinez. Obviously, to go down to 160 pounds, it would have to be for a big fight like Martinez because it would require a great sacrifice for my body to make the weight. Me against Canelo would be a great fight. I could get down to 160 pounds if he wanted, but as you know, making that fight would be complicated because of our promoters not working together. I'm not interested in a Marco Antonio Rubio fight because people are not interested and because I already beat him, Chavez said. As far as the super middleweight limit, Chavez wants to face the world champions. I would like to face Andre Ward or Carl Froch at 168. Alright, so these are the comments that I'm pretty much going to address. Okay, number one, by the looks of things, it looks like Chavez Jr. just can't make 160 anymore. I mean, it looks like he finally can't kill himself to make this weight, and if he does, it's really going to affect his performance in the ring. So that's number one. So I don't really know how possible those fights really are anymore, as far as him versus Sergio and maybe possibly him versus Canelo, because this guy is struggling to make 168. I mean, which is crazy. Um, so I don't even know how possible those fights are. I mean, he says it himself that it would have to happen between his next couple of fights. I mean, because this guy is just pretty much getting bigger and bigger, man. So him being able to make that weight is just becoming less and less possible. This is going to be the interesting thing. I mean, maybe Sergio Martinez and Canelo pay attention to the fact that he's struggling with this weight so much, and so maybe they want him to come back down to 160 so they can get an advantage. Who knows? But this guy is clearly a light heavyweight, at least a light heavyweight. I mean, he's walking around cruiserweight. He's walking around as a cruiserweight. I mean, we used to joke about it in the past, but no, like it's serious. Like he's walking around at the cruiserweight limit here. So I don't know, man. This guy Chavez Jr. like looks like his career is just kind of evaporating before our eyes. But as far as him facing a guy like Andre Ward or Carl Froch, man, boy is he in for it if he decides to do that. I wouldn't mind seeing either of those fights. I personally would like to see Chavez stay at 168, if not go higher, but at least at 168. Because at the end of the day, you shouldn't be killing your body to make weight like that, especially if you're somebody who's not dedicated to training already. Obviously, you should just go ahead and try to make 168 if you could do that. So it looks like we might be looking at a fight between Chavez Jr. and Andre Ward, or Chavez Jr. and Carl Froch. What I will give Chavez Jr. is at least he is trying to go after champions. You know what I mean? So at least he's only trying to go after guys who pretty much have belts. So at least that I'll give him that. Kudos to him for doing that. But at the end of the day, man, this dude really has to dedicate himself and train a lot harder. Um, if he's gonna even have a chance against any of these guys, man. And I don't give him a chance against Andre Ward or Carl Froch. I really don't. I was skeptical if he could beat Canelo, let alone one of those guys. So that's where I'm at with Chavez Jr. But yeah, Chavez Jr. has really been struggling to make weight recently, and these are the fights that he's interested in, man. But we're gonna see how he does against Brian Vera, and that's gonna determine whether any of these fights are gonna even be on the table for him, and at what weight. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. You guys, let me know what y'all think about this whole Chavez Jr. situation. Does he have an earthly chance against any of these guys that he's trying to fight? And what should be his next move? Peace.